what? It can be drought, it can be flooding, it can be maybe an intense period. Are you getting it? Of coldness. Are you getting it? It can be maybe an earthquake. It can be maybe, let us say, something like a fire. Are you getting it? And what does this mean? In this case, please let us note that there is no organism in this case. Are you getting it? Which is adapted to fires. Are you getting it? An organism which is that for it has got a phenotypic feature which makes it to be adapted to floods. Becky, I can see your hand. Becky, I can see your hand.
Teacher, I'm lost from genetic load. Genetic load.
Now, what we are saying, are you getting it? We are saying that when there is now genetic load itself, what does it mean? Let us start with that. Are you getting it? Genetic load means an existence or a condition where there is existence of some undesired allele. Are you getting it? Like, for example, when I said HBS, the allele for the one which brings about that recessive allele, that brings about sickle cell trait, are you getting it? Is undesired. It is unwanted. It can be harmful. Are you getting it? But that existence of that undesired allele in the heterozygous state is what we call genetic what? Load. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes, teacher.
Now, this undesired trait, I get it. This undesired allele, when it is in the heterozygous state, it makes the organism to have an advantage over the other. It makes the organism to possess an advantage over other organisms of other genotypes. Does that make sense now?
Yes, teacher.
Let us move slowly. Are you getting it? Now, if one organism, because of the genotype it possesses, that for it is advantageous, what does that mean? Now I'm looking at survival. Are you getting it? That the organisms which are HBA, are you getting it? For them, they have their survival rate is low. So what does that mean? They are dying out. Are you getting it? So that means the frequency of allele A, HBA, goes on doing what? Reducing, because the homozygous organisms are doing what? Are dying out. Is it okay up to that level? Because we are looking at changes we are looking at changes in the gene frequency. We are looking at changes in the allele frequencies. Are you getting it? People, organisms which are HBA have a reduced survival rate. So that means for them, as the population, as we move, the generation, are you getting it? The numbers of organisms who are homozygous for that genotype are reducing. So meaning that also the allele frequency is doing what? Reducing. Is it okay?
Yes, teacher.
So now what does that mean? Now the numbers of the others, are you getting it? Are reducing at the expense of one genotype. Are you getting it? That for this one here, the organisms which are heterozygous in this population, for them they are increasing, while the organisms which are homozygous, dominant and recessive, for them they are doing what? Reducing. So that means there is a change which is doing what? Occurring. So the Hadeweinsberg's equilibrium or law cannot hold where we have one organism having an advantage because of the genotype it possesses. Is it okay?
Yes, teacher.
Now, when we come to genetic death by
Excuse me, teacher.
yes, please, you're excused.
Teacher, this part where you talked about being Christian, the giving.
That where I talked about
The hemoglobin crystallizing and the plasmodium over what? I didn't get.
now what we are saying. I was bringing in how is this one advantageous in the tropical regions. Are you getting it? Now I say for the tropical regions, we have the incidence of malaria is high. Are you getting it? And I was saying malaria, it is due to the plasmodium parasite. I'm assuming that we know plasmodium. Are you getting it? It is under actually the phylum where we find an amoeba, that is protozoa. Are you getting it? And class called Apicomplexa. That's where we can find the plasmodium parasite. Now, this plasmodium parasite, when it enters, it goes for the red blood cell. Are you getting it? It goes for the red blood cell. That's where it goes on to be housed. Are you getting it? Or that's where it goes on to survive. And then it will divide from there in order to produce very many. Are you getting it? They are called, I think they are called schizones, something of the sort. When you look at the plasmodium life cycle, but I'm not going into the plasmodium life cycle. But let us understand that the plasmodium parasite will go on to be housed in the in the red blood cell. And when it is within the red blood cell of this individual who has HbS, now it has an effect of reducing on the oxygen carriage of that red blood cell. When we reach transport, we shall see how oxygen is carried and so on. Are you getting it? But now that means it has an effect on the oxygen capacity in that red blood cell. Now, because of that, because it reduces it, for these individuals with this HbS, when their red blood cell has less oxygen, their hemoglobin, which is found in their cytoplasm, goes on to crystallize. It forms crystals. Are you getting it? The hemoglobin crystallizes out. Now, when the hemoglobin crystallizes out, the cell moves from being concave to becoming sickle shaped. Are you getting it? The cell, the red blood cell, which was biconcave, the red blood cell which was biconcave, because it is always in such a format. Are you getting it? The red blood cell which was biconcave, it goes on to become sickle shaped. I'm assuming that people know a sickle. It is used in agriculture. Now that is what I have drawn there. Are you getting it? It becomes sickle shaped. Now, when it is in this form, now what happens? For as blood is moving through a spleen, we have an organ called the spleen, and it is responsible for breaking down the old abnormal red blood cells and so on. So even the sickle-shaped red blood cells will be retained and will be broken down. But remember, our plasmodium parasite is the one which led to that. That means it is inside the sickle red blood cell. And so also it is going to be killed from that area. So that means it gains the body or the organism which is having this, has an immune, or it goes on to develop an immune system. Are you getting it? Against what? The plasmodium. So that means for these people with HbA, HbS, for them, they don't suffer, or they are immune against the what? The malaria what? Parasites. So meaning that for them in an area where there is a lot of malaria, for these ones, they have an advantage that for them, they will survive. Malaria will not affect them as the other individuals will be affected. So I don't know if I have tried to make you, are you getting in? This one now was coming in, I was trying to explain how this one becomes advantageous compared to the other two. Now, I said for the genetic death, a condition where an organism which has reached sexual maturity fails to reproduce an organism to represent it in the next generation. Are you getting in? Now, like I will say, for people who are sterile, are you getting in? Those individuals, they reach sexual maturity, but they cannot reproduce. So that means their genes, they die with their genes. Their genes will not be part of the next generation. So that's why that's what we call genetic what? Death. So that means again, the number, if for example, maybe an individual, definitely he has certain, he might possess, maybe he might be homozygous, he might be heterozygous. Are you getting it? If he fails to reproduce, that means there is a particular number of genes. If we are looking at only one pair, that means there are two alleles which will be missing in the next generation. Then for genetic drift, we are saying genetic drift, that is where we have the change. Are you getting it? It refers to a change in the allele frequency in a population, which is by chance rather than by natural selection. It is due to chance rather than natural selection. So what does that mean? And I said, when we say by chance, other than natural selection, that's why I said majorly this type of, or the change in the allele frequency will be due to natural catastrophes. The changes in the allele frequencies will be due to natural catastrophes. That a population is there, which is with that gene pool there, and then what happens? Maybe a fire comes up. Are you getting it? Now, this fire will eliminate, definitely, some organisms will die due to that fire. But the organisms which die, it is not because of the genotypes they possess. No, it is just a chance. Are you getting it? Maybe let me use even, maybe I'll use a case of an accident. Are you getting it? That, you know, some maybe people are traveling in a bus, or people are traveling in an airplane. Are you getting it? And then what happens? The thing goes on to get an accident. Are you getting it? So those ones who survive, it is not that because they were strong or because of what? No, it is just luck. Are you getting it? So it is just chance that for you, you survived. Well, the other one died just because of also, that is, I'll use the word he or she was lucky. Are you getting it in that case? So that's now what we are saying. That the change in the allele frequency is due to chance and not by natural selection. Are you getting it? That is what we mean by genetic drift. And I was saying that under genetic drift, these natural catastrophes, I talked about things like, for example, fires, we talk about earthquakes. Are you getting it? And we can talk about any other. Are you getting it? Now, what happens after this maybe accident, or after this catastrophe occurring? That we shall remain with a smaller population. We shall remain with a smaller population of the large population which was there. Are you getting it? But now, this small population which has remained is not all the alleles which were in the main population are all still in existence. Are you getting it? Some are there, some might not be there. So some are there, some might not be present. Are you getting it? Now, if this small population which has remained goes ahead to start, these organisms go on to start breeding within themselves, definitely it will never represent the other population which was there before. Are you getting it? It will never represent the other population which was there before. You might find that our population which comes up, maybe it has got very many of the homozygous organisms. Are you getting it? Meaning that it will be so much of inbreeding. Are you getting it? Which does what occurs. But let us understand that under genetic drift, we are looking at a scenario or a change in the allele frequency, which is brought up by chance rather than by natural selection. And then lastly, where I will end for today, where we are ending for today, please, I will leave you with something called the founder's effect. I'll leave you with something called the what? The founder's what? Effect. Though, when you look at that founder's effect, somehow it is closer to genetic drift. Somehow it is closer to genetic what? Drift. Though in the founder's effect, majorly we look at a barrier. Are you getting it? A barrier which comes up and separates or isolates the population. Are you getting it? Like, for example, we can have maybe like insects moving on a log of wood. That means a rotten log of wood. I'm assuming that we know safari ants. And then this goes on to break suddenly at one point. Are you getting in? Definitely it will break down and it goes on to reduce on the what? On the population. Are you getting in? And when that one happens, this smaller population, if they go on to start multiplying, definitely they are not a representative of the former. Are you getting it? So please, for founder's effect, when a barrier arises, are you getting it? Within a population, and when it has isolated that smaller population, will not be like the original larger population. And if these organisms, are you getting it? Go on to mate within themselves, definitely they will produce a new gene pool, which will not possess the same alleles as those ones which were there before. So those are some of the factors that bring about, though please, there are very many others which we are going to look at. Someone might say that these ones are all no, even mutations, even selection. I will come back to the natural selection. So please, also mutation is part of that. So those are factors that go on to bring about changes in the gene pool, to bring about changes in the allele frequencies of a particular gene pool. So we shall continue from there next time. Have a lovely weekend and a nice
founder effect.
eh? Founders. I said for founders effect, it is somehow like it is actually, I can say for some books, actually it is under genetic what? Drift. But under genetic drift, we said majorly natural catastrophes. Are you getting it? But for the founders effect, where something, a barrier, are you getting it, comes up and isolates organisms in the population. Are you getting it? A barrier comes up, isolating organisms in the what? In the population. And I used an example of safari ants. Are you getting it? Moving on a damp, rotten what? Log of wood, which goes on to break suddenly. Now, when it breaks, that means some remain on the other piece of log, and others remain on the other piece of what? Log. Are you getting it? But this smaller population, which remained on one log, are you getting it? If they go on to breed within themselves, they will come up with a gene pool which is not similar to the original gene pool or to the parent what? Gene pool. That is now about the founder's what? Effect. But in most books, you will find the founder's effect under genetic what? Drift. Nakalembe, I can see your hand.
Teacher, pardon on what you meant by natural selection.
Yeah, don't mind, Nakalembe. This one's here, I'm using all these. Are you getting it? Now, after our next topic, what we are going to deal with next time, we are dealing with variation and evolution. Are you getting it? Now, under evolution, we are going to look at natural selection. Are you getting it? And under variation, we shall look at mutation. That's why I never talked about also the mutation. I never went deep into it because we are going to look at variation, and under variation, we shall look at mutation. And then after that, we go to evolution. And within evolution, that's when we shall bring in natural selection. So we shall talk about natural selection there.
Teacher?
Yes, please.
You also said that on this factor for non-random breeding, the chances of getting the homozygosity is high.
Yeah.
So how will that reduce the allele frequency?
Now, if, for example, now you look at it, what we are saying, do you remember yesterday when I said that someone on Abanonya, Bukede thing, said that I don't want, it was a lady in this case, are you getting it? She said she doesn't want someone who is a Muslim, someone who is short, and someone who is a Musoga. Does that make sense? Now I'm bringing in the non-random. Are you getting it? That now, that means this individual has a particular, she's selecting. Are you getting it? So that means there is a group of individuals who are not going to get a chance to do what? To mate with another group. And whenever that one comes about, that means we are reducing the tendency, because if you remember, I used at one point, I used this because we need to note this. We said we have organisms like that, because which had remained in this population, that we had capital B, and then the small b, they were only heterozygous individuals. Are you getting it? Now, if these individuals here cannot mate with these individuals in this population, what does that mean? That these ones will only mate with themselves. Does that make sense? But they cannot mate with these. So since they cannot mate with this, that means also this one can only mate within themselves. Do you think that the proportion of B, capital B, will be still high, or it will reduce?
It will reduce.
Does that make sense? Because these ones are only mating within themselves. But if, for example, these ones here, that we have also a chance of this. If you remember what I did, I said there is a chance, if it is random mating, there is a chance of this one mating with this, or this one mating with this, or this one mating with that. Are you getting it? So the number of the alleles will remain, because it is what? Is something where it is random. But if these ones mate within themselves, and also these ones can only mate with themselves, that means the chances, please, from this one here, I can show this. We shall have from that, we shall have this, and then we shall have these two. So what does that mean? We need to look at, are you getting? We shall have this here. Maybe let me even put this for some individuals to understand it. So we shall have also that one there. Then we shall have this here. And then we shall have also this here. So from that, I think you can see that the numbers are increasing. Are you getting it? Now, that is what you can get from that. But also, if we are using only this and only that, that means we are going to miss out on this. We shall miss out on that. Even this one, we shall miss out on that. And this one is giving us very many of those. So if it doesn't occur, that means how many alleles are we missing from the capital B? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 will be missing. Are you getting it? And the small b, 1, 2 will be missing. But if we only have this one here, that means, let me see how many are we adding from this and this. We shall have that there. We shall have that there. Then we shall have capital B, and then we shall have capital B small b. So now 1, 2, 3, 4. I want us to note that 4 capital B's. Are you getting it? Then how many small b's? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm assuming that people can see that 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if this here is not present, if this is allowed, we are getting an extra 2. Are you getting it? And we are getting an extra 6. So if I add to the 6, that is 10. Then from this one here, I'll get, that means all of them, because that means I will have 8. I don't know if it is understandable. So 8 plus 4 plus 6, what do I get? And if I removed this here, that this one wasn't occurring, that means you reduce the capital B by 6 and you reduce the small b by 2. So that means the allele number reduces. It doesn't remain the same. That is if there is non-random, because non-random, that means this one mates only with this and this one can only mate with that. That is not random mating. So I'm assuming that I have come up with that, and we shall meet.
Teacher, how come we didn't talk about mutations?
I didn't talk about mutations.
Mutations as one of the factors.
I said the factors, I haven't enumerated all of them. Actually, the one which I had written this side where you are not seeing, I said under the factors, are you getting in? I would say the following are the factors, maybe generally. Are you getting? Mutation is one of them. Non-random mating, gene flow, genetic load, genetic drift. Are you getting it? Genetic death, founder's effect. All those ones are factors. Are you getting it? That can bring about the what? The changes. Then I said, why I haven't talked so much about mutations. Are you getting it? It is due to the fact that we are going to look at mutations under variation. Are you getting it? And I will bring it, I'll connect it with this. Does that make sense?
Yes, teacher.
They are now natural selection. I haven't talked about it, but when we reach natural selection, again, I will bring it back. Does it make sense?
Yes.
So now our next thing, we are looking at variation, mutations, and evolution. And when we are through with all those, we shall just relate them, everything we just go ahead to do it, to relate it to bring it so that it makes a lot of what sense at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
Okay, you are welcome. Nice weekend.
Nice weekend.
Thank you, teacher.
People, is Viola still there?
Oh, who began the math homework for math 2?